Hello everyone and welcome back to the Retro Recall. I hope you're doing awesome. Today we have three more systems on the bench that we're going to dig in and explore. And these three systems were saved from that large e-waste pile that we got on the channel. And if you haven't seen that video, check it out right there, the large e-waste haul. And I'm telling you, there's something just about beige cases that just bring complete retro nostalgia back to me. When I see, this case, an in-wind case, when I see cases like this, and this Dell server type environment workstation, and then this monstrosity here that's just falling apart in pieces. Equal love to all from my view anyway. Not sure what you think, but today we're going to dig into all three of them and find out exactly what condition they're in and if we're able to even get them up to post. You know what? Lots to do. Let's get right to it. Welcome back, and we have system number one on the bench, and I'm just really excited to see this. Any beige system, as I mentioned before, really excited to have these sort of systems on the bench because you never know what you're going to get into when you start opening these up and start to see what kind of components were added to these systems over the years. Specifically, these type of systems that were more custom versus like an OEM system like the Dell we saw a moment ago. So this computer will go quickly over just to kind of see what components there are in it, and we'll see if we can get them going. And as we'll keep tally as we go to see of the three systems, how many systems we can get up and running. So system number one, we have what looks like an LG DVD ROM drive, pretty standard. Nice to have a beige DVD ROM drive. I have many of these types of drives, but not necessarily beige. So I have different cases, components, so nice to have that. And then this is an in-wind case. It looks like a 4-bay expansion for the 5 1/4. Plus we have two 3.5-inch expansions. And one of them is occupied by this Sony floppy drive. And I say Sony because it's actually marked on the front branded Sony. I'll be honest with you, I don't remember ever seeing a drive outside of, say, an LS120 drive that would have that branding. So it'd be interesting to see exactly what this device is. If it's just a standard 3.5-inch floppy or if it does more. And then we have our power and our reset buttons, and as well as the power and hard drive LEDs here. And again, in this beautiful in-wind case. We have a case badge here which says Pentium 4 inside. Pretty straightforward, one of their later model Pentium 4s, I believe. And then the front here on the bottom, we have looks like two USB front access ports on the front, which is really good. Now I'm going to scoot this aside and turn it around. It's quite heavy itself. And the case itself as well is quite deep. So the nice thing about these larger cases, it gives you a lot more room inside to be able to add in different components, but also larger motherboards. So we have Windows XP Professional OEM software type of badging on the side here. So it would have been in one of those sleeves that had just the sticker, the license key on the side. But again, the case itself seems to be pretty decent shape. Okay, along the back here, we have more ports. I love ports. We have all the ports in the world here and lots of expansion here as well, which is really awesome. So it looks like we have our power supply here, ATX by the looks of things. Two PS2 COM port are built on VGA or built on graphics. Printer ports, so LPT 1 port. We have 4 additional USB ports. So in addition to the 2 on the front, we have 6 built on Ethernet plus our 3 audio jacks on the back. So we also have what looks to be 7 case slots here that we could actually expand into. So it'll be interesting to see if the motherboard supports that as well. And then we have additional cooling here. So it looks like another fan was added to the back of this case for additional cooling, which is always awesome. And then it shows a little bit of a instructional badge here. It says pull the snap at the bottom of the bezel out, then remove the bezel. Pull the side cover backwards from the chassis about 20 millimeter and lift up. That's interesting. So it's basically telling us how to open up this case. So you can see on the back here, we don't really have your traditional screws that are here that you pull the side of the chassis off. So interesting to have that. So we'll definitely take its advice here in a moment. So on the other side here, we'll flip it around. And we have, I'm not sure if that was actually true to the case itself, if this was part of the design of this case, or if this was actually made by, the previous user, where they cut it out and put in a kind of a ventilation. But this is metal. This is not plastic. The bezel is plastic, but this is definitely some metal grating. So again, is this additional cooling? Probably. So we're going to see that in a moment. All right, let's flip it around here and see what's inside. So we are saying in the front here, it says lift up the front and pull off the bezel. Okay, no problem. So we're doing that. So that came off, no problem. And there we go. So you can see, yeah, definitely 2 screws would be here to be able to remove the side panels. It says pull off and then lift up. Okay, so far so good. It's telling us what it is. So that's interesting. I think this is probably the actual case design. So that's the bezel that we saw, or I should say bezel, that's the ventilation that was kind of cut out of this case and put on here. And when you put it in this side panel in the case, that ventilation goes right through to the CPU. So definitely interesting design, nice to see, so that the ventilation actually goes right from the CPU out the side of the case. So I think that's pretty neat to have in this case. And there's a date on the back here that says September 18th of 2006. I'm not sure if that's when the build was or if there was a modification done around that time, but definitely interesting. Okay, I'm going to get the tower resituated on the bench so we can have a more of a bird's eye view. Okay, and here we are with the side view, the bird's eye view of this system. And I'm kind of disappointed a little bit in the motherboard. Just first glance, only because with the size of the case and the expansion possibility in here, I was expecting a much larger motherboard. It is nice, though, to have an Asus motherboard that is installed here regardless, and with the SIS chipset here as well. We have the P5S800-VM motherboard is what's installed here. So let's go over all the components. So it looks like they have the exterior fan, as we noted in the back, that allows some additional ventilation. We also have a power supply, an ATX power supply here that does an output of 400 watts with an additional fan here as well. So generally, these could be used as well to allow additional ventilation through your case by having ventilation built into the power supply itself. Then, of course, we have the Intel branded heatsink and fan. Always nice to see these. I mean, these are pretty stock factory. You can get different types of fan and heat sinks depending on what you're doing with the processor, in terms of overclocking and things. I am seeing quite a bit of dirt caked on here. Not as bad as I've seen, but still, definitely worth cleaning out. Then we have our chipset here as well, just a heatsink on top of the chipset. And I'm looking here, and I do see we do have an AGP slot, and we have 3 PCI slots here as well. And again, like I was mentioning earlier, I was expecting to see a little more because this case does support more, but that's what we did back then. You got whatever motherboard would fit your requirements at the time. So we're not seeing much in way of cable management here. It's just kind of all thrown in here, but I think part of that has to do with the fact that there would have been a hard disk here as well, and that's been disconnected clearly. And I'm just going to pop that IDE cable out just so we have some visual room here. And then so we have our optical drive up top here, and on the top is just our LG DVD reader, so that's connected. And then going down here, we don't have anything else in the way of in the way of connections here outside of the floppy connector that's just kind of ribbon cable just sitting here. And it's interesting, we don't have the power connected to it as well, but I think it's just a standard floppy. Again, I have not seen the Sony branding or a brand on front of the drive before, so that's why I thought it was much more of like a zip drive or an LS120 drive. Generally, they would have more branding on them, but that doesn't seem to be the case here. But we also have memory in here installed. Let's see what we have. Looks like to be DDR memory here. So we have DDR PC 3200 RAM. I don't know if you can see that on camera there, 512 megabytes. And yeah, it's a little dirty here just because of the positioning of the RAM, specifically next to the CPU. And of course, lots of airflow, of course, promotes lots of dust. And that's what generally gets caked on to the chips here, as well as any sort of surrounding components. That leads me into the capacitors. So I'll take a look at the capacitors, just a visual view, and I'm not seeing any of the capacitors that seem to be bulging or seem to have any sort of physical damage to them. by the looks of things, but generally any capacitors within the processor area here, or the heatsink, where there's heat and they're exposed to any of that heat, tend to be first to go before going anywhere else, because they're subject to the most kind of environmental areas. So it's important to keep the cooling going. But where you have the fan here, the fan here, the fan here, it seems to have helped. And then, of course, you also have that shroud that comes off of here as part of that panel that we're missing here that would allow the additional ventilation to go directly out of the computer, which is nice to see. So the motherboard also has 2 IDE ports, and then we also have our floppy disk header here as well. We have our power supply connected to the motherboard, again being ATX. I'm not seeing where it's a P4 board if there's any other connections required. It doesn't seem to be, but usually that 4-pin I find is connected, but we don't have to worry about that on this motherboard. So we have the 2, like I said, 2 sticks of RAM, probably 1 gig of memory. We also have, interesting enough, the SATA connectivity here as well. So we do have the ability to utilize a SATA connection versus just using the IDE ribbon cable. So again, as you know, ribbon cables are a little bigger than the SATA connectors themselves. So it gives you a little more options for doing that. So it looks like they selectively had taken out the hard drive for sure, disconnected a couple cables. I would say that, based on what I'm seeing here, none of the breakouts are, the breakout in the back here, the expansions have been removed. So I'm not sure if this ever had anything else outside of just what's built onto the motherboard. Okay, I think that's pretty good. I think in condition here, there's nothing here that's screaming, it's not going to post. But yeah, it'd be interesting to get going again. So I'm just going to go ahead and hook up this floppy disk drive and just turn the system around and see if we can get this posting. Okay, and here we are all set back up on the bench. Nice and exciting to have our standard Hewlett-Packard monitor back, as you know, as you've seen many times on the channel, and our keyboard and mouse here respectively. So we have the power all plugged in and everything plugged into the back of the computer. I'm going to hit the power button and we're going to see if the system will post. We have power, and I'm not getting anything. No beeps, nothing. Nothing on the keyboard. Okay, I'm just going to turn off the computer real quickly here, and we're going to reseat that memory. Probably has something to do with the RAM. Even though we're not getting beeps, this would be a good place to start, and we'll see if we can get the system posting. Okay, and we're back here, and you're seeing a different view again because I did some troubleshooting with this board just to see if we can get this computer up and running. So I did take out the 2 sticks of memory here, and I did use contact cleaner to make sure that all the contacts were good, and they look good to me, and I'm not getting any postcodes or beeps, sorry, I should say. And so I popped in the post analyzer card, and I believe I'm finding what's happening here based on what you're about to see. So I did want to make sure the voltages were fine. I was going to take my power supply tester, but the post analyzer card here that you've seen in other videos also show us what the system is doing. So I'm just going to pop the power back in here, and see if we can turn the power back on to the computer. And if I can find the power switch, we'll be all set. There we are. And you'll see here the post analyzer shows all the rails are fine, all the power rails, but it's not coming out of reset. So generally that implies there's something going on with the processor or the chipset that's not allowing the processor to execute code to say, okay, come out of reset and start functioning. What I'd like to do now is just remove the processor from here to see if we can get any sort of activity on the postcard at all. So let's turn off the power here. Turn off the power to the back of the power supply because it won't do it otherwise, and remove the heatsink here. So I've gone ahead and removed the heatsink and fan assembly from the processor just to show everyone here. And remember I had said earlier about the 4-pin, I couldn't find it. Well, it's right there. It goes to the top of the motherboard. And I did test that power out and it is fine. So I took out the processor just to show you what I did. So I ended up taking out the processor here from the mount itself, and there's the Pentium 4 processor. Everything's looking good there, and I mean the paste is fine. I mean for what it is, the age of it. I used some contact cleaner in there again, and everything looked clean. Nothing was bad there. And then when I just put the processor back in after I'd used the contact cleaner, and make sure your pins all line up. I mean, it is shaped, the processor is shaped, so you can make sure you put it in correctly. So you close it up and turn it back on, and it should be getting something different, or something, if it was an issue with that, something different on the postcard. I'm not. So it's like I said, it's not coming out of reset. And so the other thing I notice is the processor is not even heating up at all. There's zero heat. This should be heating up quite well if it was getting, any sort of instructions or any sort of power or anything going on. It's just cold to the touch. There's absolutely zero heat coming from that processor. And there should be something. So my guess, it's something to do with the capacitors around this processor, as I was mentioning earlier. I didn't see anything until I removed the heatsink, and now I'm seeing all these capacitors, these smaller capacitors you see here. There seems to be 3, 6, 10 of them here. They're all oxidized on the top of them. There's definitely some residue there. I'm not exactly sure what it is, but there's definitely some gunk going on there. So I'm not sure if the capacitors are bad here or not without doing further testing. But in this particular case, the computer is not coming out of reset. The CPU is not executing code. It is absolutely cold to the touch. Like, I shouldn't be able to put my fingers right on the Pentium 4 processor of all processors, and I'm not able to get any sort of reaction from this processor. So my gut feeling is that there's something going on in this area that we're going to have to do further troubleshooting on to get this computer up and running and posting. So unfortunately, at this stage, we'll say system number 1 has failed. Boo. So we're going to have to move on to system number 2, but this will be in a different video where we actually go and troubleshoot this a little further. We can replace some of the capacitors and find out exactly what is going on with this board. Because again, I'd like to be able to get the system up and running and find, it would be a good board or good system to use. If not, you know what? We'll use the parts. We'll use the case, because the case is a beautiful in-wind case, and we can definitely use that in a future build. Okay, as I mentioned, let's move on to system number 2. Okay, we're back, and here we are with system number 2. And another awesome Dell on the bench, one of the definitely older style systems here. And it is extremely heavy. This is just built so solidly. And yeah, I mean, I would not want to carry these around much, I tell you right now. It is a Dell Precision 420, sporting the stickers in the front here. It says designed for Microsoft Windows 2000 Professional, or NT Workstation 4, or Windows 98, and sporting the Intel Inside Pentium 3 case badge there. Not sure if it is or not, but we're going to find out. On the top, we have, just a molded front here for the 3.5-inch floppy, but we have a populated bay in the back here. We just have an optical drive here. Not exactly sure what it is, if it's just a CD-ROM drive or not. We have 2 additional 5.25 bay expansion capability in the system here. We also have what looks like a reset button, and then we have a power button here on the front, and then we have a hard disk LED, and the power light looks like, or the power button looks like it has an LED in behind it to be able to turn on and indicate that this system is on. Now, the system is quite heavy, like I mentioned. It's quite hefty, and so it's been through some damage here, but all these seem to be surface scrapes. There don't seem to be any sort of physical dents in the computer itself. But again, just extremely, extremely heavy. Okay, on the back here, we have lots of different options here as well. This must have been used in some sort of server environment is all I can think of, based on the looks of things and based on what it would have been purchased for. So on the back here, we have what looks like a SCSI connection for external SCSI capability of external SCSI devices, peripherals, things like that. Mostly, I think, tape backups or hard disk drives. And then we also have what looks like a parallel port here as well, 2 COM ports that are built side by side, 2 PS2 ports here. We also have 3 audio jacks, 2 USB, and we have our gigabit Ethernet. I imagine it's gigabit or potentially 10100. We'll have to find out. We have, looks like, a dual output video card here, as well as an additional expansion for another Ethernet card, so you can have dual Ethernet. Probably was used in a server type role. We also have additional ventilation here via an extra fan, and we also have what looks like a power supply that's populated here. And it also looks like there's an ability here to add an additional power supply. It looks like, so you'd have dual power supply for redundancy. So again, if this was used in a server environment, that's probably would be used. It's interesting to have the Dell branded breakouts here that are still populated outside of the 2 that are utilized. So in the front here, there's a little button. I don't know if you guys see it. The system's so big, I'm trying to get it all into frame. But on the front here, there's a little button you press. So there's a little button you press in the front, and then it releases the side panel here. So I have that off now. And then look, I mean, the computer is just built like a tank. I mean, this is all stainless steel and just built all. And this is the power supply here. Look at that chonkin power supply. Oh my goodness. So I'm going to flip this around on its side just so we have a better view of what's in the computer. Okay, we're back with the computer on its side so we can have a better view. Yeah, again, as I mentioned, it's just so big. Everything in here it's fully occupied. I feel like it's like a maze to get into anywhere in the system. So it looks like this, this just flips up this way. So it looks like there's an additional ability here, as I mentioned, for another power supply that could potentially go in here. It looks like another ATX connector that's up top here to be able to hook up the secondary power supply. So definitely neat to see. And we have down here, I'm just going to skip over down here so we can start to access everything. We have looks like our power supply, our primary power supply, that when you go like this with the lever, it shunts it back so that it can be tilted outwards. Let's just make sure I get this right. If I'm right, yeah, okay, there we are. It allows you to be able to access the rest of the system. And there's just so much to this computer. I mean, even this cage here, this support bar that's here actually needs to be removed in order for us to access the video card. Let me just get a screwdriver here. But yeah, just looking at this, it's built so strong. All right, just going to take out this screw. I think it's just that one screw that just dropped inside. Great. I'll have to get that before we turn on the computer again. And yeah, we just take that out, and then you see the rest of the okay, so that was holding the card in as well. Just a note, there's a little thing on the back that was holding down on the video card, which we'll take out in a moment. But you'll see how big this motherboard truly is. It's just taking up the whole back plane of this case. We also have the CPU cooler here housing, which just looks like it's just a plastic bezel here. So take it out here so you can see this chonkin. Just look at the heat sink on this thing. I don't know. Is this dual? It must be, yeah, it looks like dual Pentium 3 that's in this computer. Look at that. So we have the two SLOT1 Pentium 3 connectors here. Look, I'm just seeing this for the first time. I'm not going to take this out because these are screwed into the motherboard, but you'll see that this is just look at that chonkin heatsink that we have here. That's just absolutely mega cooling for these dual Pentium 3 CPUs. That's just absolutely cool to see. And then, of course, we have our primary fan that's in here as well to do the ventilation for these dual Pentium 3 processors here. But that's so cool. And then having that kind of vent hood type thing allows the airflow to be forced through that area. Again, really cool to see that, especially in the Pentium 3 era. I'm going to remove this card here to see what we have. And it looks like we have the slot itself looks like an AGP, additional AGP there, but the video card itself here is an AGB card, dual VGA. And let's see what we have in the back here, what we have for a model. So we have Dell part numbers. So it is a Matrox card. Copyright 1999 is what it is. And I'm just trying to see if there's any sort of model information on this at all, just from Matrox themselves. It just says Matrox 906-04 Rev B, copyright 1999, but it's not giving me any sort of information so far. So if you know what this video card is specifically, please let me know down in the comments. Really appreciate all the interaction when it comes to this stuff. And especially if this was used in some sort of server environment, obviously having a card that's built in with dual VGA at the time would have been pretty neat. Okay, so I'm going to pop that back in there just to have that properly in the slot so we don't do any damage there. And we also have, it looks like an Ethernet card, just an expansion Ethernet card, nothing fancy, just having an additional expansion. And then we have our power supply plugged in down here on the bottom. So we have our two connectors going to the motherboard to have that. We have the Adaptec chipset here, which I imagine is probably driving the SCSI connections there. We also have what looks like a internal SCSI. So, okay, so we have both Yeah, look at that. So we have internal SCSI cable connector here. We also have the terminator there as well. So it can also support the internal SCSI drives if required. There's no hard disk in this system as well, just make note of that. So we're not going to be able to see anything there. We do have our floppy and our IDE, our standard IDE and floppy connector ribbon cables here. I mean, they're just split out, so just to be able to have some cable management going on, but it's neat to have that as well. Plus we have the Molex connectors there. And then we have an audio cable going from the motherboard over to the optical drive. So regardless of whatever this was used for, hey, you could play CD-ROM media on there if you really wanted to. And then it looks like RD-RAM that's installed here. So we have 4 slots or 4 sticks populated, and they are all populated with memory. It's not any sort of filler cards, because from what I understand from RD-RAM, you need to have always have an extra stick in there. So you can't leave one of these bays or banks, I should say, that are open. You can't leave them empty. You have to have them populated, whether it's with a filler card or with an actual stick of memory. Okay, I mean, overall condition here, I mean, it's looking good. The board itself, I mean, there's very little dirt, to be honest with you, that's inside this case. A little bit of dust here and there, but, you know, if this was used in any sort of server environment or used as a server, it would have been probably looked after in some sort of sterile-ish environment. So the dust would have been more minimal. At least ideally, you'd want that. I'm still infatuated with the dual Pentium 3 CPUs here with these huge heat sinks on the side here. I just think it's absolutely crazy to see. And then, again, that Matrox card is nice to see as well. Okay, I'm going to put this all back together. There's a lot of different things I got to do to get this back up. I'm going to see if I can find that screw that fell down inside, because I don't want that shorting anything out down inside. And then we'll get the bench all set up and see if we can get the system at least fired up and at least posting. I really want to see this going because I just want to see what it was like back then in a system like this, if it was actually truly used in a server environment. So let's go. Okay, and we're back, and we're all set up on the bench with our keyboard, monitor, and mouse. And I plugged the power into the back of the computer just to have it in there for before I started shooting the video. It spun up and turned off. So it did the kind of, hey, I'm ready to start up. So it might be a good sign. And again, I didn't touch the memory because, you know, memory of this age can be a little finicky when you're starting to put in and out. And you start getting the contact cleaner involved, etc. So I'm just leaving it the way it is for now. And we'll hit the power button and see if we can get post. She's loud. Do we have post? I got 2 beeps. There's nothing on the display yet, but I'm getting a response on the keyboard. Let me just see here. It is a dual video card, so it's possible it's the other port. And I believe I saw text on that screen. Okay, we have post. System number 2, everybody, is posting. Exciting. All right, so we have, okay, this is like Christmas. All right, so we have Dell System Precision Workstation 420 MT, and that's loud. Oh my goodness. I mean, I'm sure if we put the side case on, it's probably quieter, but anyway, okay. So we have our information here, all our standard information. Value configuration, please run setup program, primary hard disk 0 not found, time of day not set, so it's screaming at us. Alert cover's been removed. We know all this. We've done all this. We just reviewed all this. Okay, F1 to continue or F2 to run the setup. Let's go into F2 to run the setup. And here we are. It says it's an Intel Pentium 3 processor, 866 megahertz, level 2 cache, 256 integrated. It's, according to this, it's 2001, so we're blast from the past here. Disk drive A is 3.5 inch, and of course we have unknown devices right now because we don't have any sort of, we don't have anything installed right now in that for the hard drive. Okay, we have our CD-ROM reader here. That's great. Hard disk drive sequence. So that's, what startup devices and what to do from there if you have multiple hard disks. System memories, 512 megabytes of ECC RD RAM is installed. 64 meg AGP aperture, CPU information, So we have CPU is normal bus speed, so processor 0 and processor 1. So it is dual CPU, dual Pentium 3 866 megahertz CPUs. That's awesome. Integrated devices, so you can go in here and do all your controls, turn them on, onboard NIC, onboard, all the different devices, your sound card, etc. Just going to make sure that opens up. Yeah, okay, it does. Awesome. Let's keep on going down here. So I think we're good here. So I'm gonna hit escape, and we're gonna. It's not gonna boot right now, so I'm gonna put in Knoppix to see if we can get it booting to an operating system. Okay, we have Knoppix in the CD-ROM drive. Hit F1 to try reboot. So far, so good. Okay, what's the finding here? So I found our dual CPUs here, Pentium 3 CPUs. I think that's awesome. The Coppermine CPUs. And what else do we have here? Matrox Electronic Systems MGA G400 or G450 is what I found for the video card. And the Cirrus Logic onboard built-in audio accelerator. So we have that crystal clear sound fusion audio. It's interesting. So it's continuing to detect our hardware, but sometimes it's really great to see this because then you can see exactly what you have in terms of components if you can't run any sort of OS at the moment. And here we are up and running in Knoppix on this beautiful Dell Precision 420 with our dual Pentium 3 CPUs. I just love seeing this. Now, this just tells me everything's working great, and you can probably hear it, but the fan is just grinding back there, that auxiliary fan that was used for the ventilation for the CPUs. Definitely needs to be taken apart, and the bearing needs to be probably oiled with some machine oil. But again, like I said, everything else seems to be working fairly well on this computer. I would love, this would be a really cool retro build. Get a different type of video card in there and and some different memory. But yeah, it's working. System number 2 is working. It's posting, it's working, and it's great to see the quality of the hardware that the system is presenting. Okay, I believe this deserves its own video on its own for restoration, but until then, let's move on to system number 3. Okay, and we're back with system number 3, and oh my goodness, this poor computer. It looks like it's been through heck and back. Oh my goodness. The front, the bezel's coming off, the front fillers don't even attach anymore. The side panel's already half off. Oh my goodness. And this is the way I got the computers. And I said, sure. I love a challenge. So let's go. Okay, so we have, again, one of those custom built computers. And I like these types of computers because you get interesting designs on the cases in terms of different styles. And then you never know what's going to be going on inside this computer. What's inside in terms of the components and parts and etc. And the only indication I have what's in the computer is the Pentium 2 case badge here. So outside of that, I don't know what's going on here. So we're going to find out in a moment. Okay, on the front here, we just have what looks like a generic CD-ROM drive and the ability to add 2 additional components here in terms of the 5.25-inch expansions. We also have the ability to have 2 3.5-inch type drive bay expansions here, one of which is populated with 3.5-inch floppy drive. We also have a power switch here, which is not very on this case, so we'll have to install that properly. And then we also have a reset button here, as well as a sleep standby button. That's interesting here. So we have the hard drive LED. The power button has an LED built into itself, but then we also have sleep standby light here, which is interesting. Then we have, rubberized type case badge here as well. It says circuit line on it. Okay, let's flip this case around on the side. So on the side here, we have similar story. It doesn't look, it's not damaged at all, to be honest with you. There's no dents at all on the side here, which is always really what I look for in the chassis, because if it's all dented, it's harder to get a replacement unless you have a couple of the same in the collection. But when it's just like this, you can give them a nice scrub down, clean up, and especially magic erasers are really good for that. But then you also respray these in terms of painting and things like that to make them look really good again. We have our ATX power supply here, by the looks of things, 2 PS2, 2 USB in the back, 2 COM ports that are here, as well as an LPT port. And then we have dedicated graphics that looks like it's using one of the expansions. We do have an external SCSI ability connector here as well, which is really awesome to see. Then we have a Ethernet card, breakout card here as well. Actually, I would say that. Is that a modem as well? No, that's Ethernet as well. So we have dual Ethernet that's installed in this computer. And we also have a separate sound card that is added into this computer as well. It'd be interesting to see what that card is. So on the back here, we have T&E Electronics. We have Circuit Time Computer System. So system is a Pentium 2 450 MMX, and then gives us our serial information. And in the back here, looks like we do have a populated fan here for extra ventilation. Okay, I'm going to take this side panel off because I'm really excited to see what is inside this computer. And we'll flip this computer around so everybody has a better view of what's inside this system. Okay, and here we are, and talk about saving the best for last. Even though the outside was absolutely a write-off in terms of the case itself, look at the pile of goodies inside this computer. So first thing I'm going to do is remove this kind of holder here that was supposed to be mounted here, which is, I believe, for the hard disk. And I don't see any hard disk installed in here. I mean, not surprising. We haven't seen that along the whole way. So then we do have what looks like a SCSI CD-ROM drive, so SCSI CD-ROM drive, that is connected here via the internal SCSI cable, so that is utilized. I'm just going to remove it for now, just so we have a better view of what's going on inside this computer. And of course, that audio cable is all wrapped around it. And the outside power here and the LED and everything. Oh, okay. Just a second here. There we go. All right, we have that big, I mean, ribbon cables are bad enough, but when you have a SCSI ribbon cable, my goodness, definitely a little more challenging to work with. Okay, so we have that out of the way now, including our floppy. I just disconnected. I have to remember to put that back in. So we'll start at the top and work our way down. So we have our ATX power supply here, pretty straightforward. And then we have this kind of like roll cage thing here for strength for the case. But if you're seeing what I'm seeing here, I'm seeing dual Pentium 2 SLOT1 processors. That's right. This motherboard supports dual Pentium 2 processors. And, you know, it does say in the front, in the badge that we saw, it's a Pentium 2 450. So dual Pentium 2 450 processors is what I'm assuming here. We also have one stick of memory that's installed here. It does look like one has been removed. Not sure. We'll have to figure out what that is, but it is SD RAM. And then, so our video card, we're going to do one by one here and take these components out because I'm really excited to see what we have in store in terms of the expansion cards that have been added into this computer. And that's one of the things you get in these sort of computers. As I mentioned earlier, you do have these systems that have these multiple custom type builds for different various reasons and get upgraded over the years. So here we have a Matrox video card as well. And it is a G200, Matrox Millennium G200 8 megabyte card. So that's what we have inside. Plus, we also have the ability, by the looks of things, to install additional memory onto the PCB here. So really good to have that as well. Then we have our SCSI card here that is into one of the PCI slots. So the motherboard is an Asus P2B-D. Is the motherboard model. So you want to look that up. It's a Asus P2B-D. Really cool to see. Then we have our dual network cards here in separate PCI slots here. So really cool to have that. And then here we also have our sound card. So I'm just going to remove the audio cable that's going to the optical drive, and we're going to remove that as well to see what sound card we have inside this computer. I'm just absolutely ecstatic to see all these components inside this computer. And this is my first, I'll call it out, my first dual Pentium 2 system. That just really excites me. And to be honest with you, when I first saw this computer, this tower as part of the e-waste pile, I just said, this is going to be junk. But you know what? Good things come in different packages. Don't judge a book by its cover. You know, all those different analogies. It comes true in this case. So here we have a Creative Labs Sound Blaster model CT2940. So it is probably Sound Blaster 16 would be my guess. It is ISA, copyright creative technology of 1995. Beautiful looking card. Still has the IDE interface built on the board. And then we also have the various headers here for your audio capability. But anytime we get an ISA card like this, it's awesome. And may I mention, this motherboard is absolutely amazing. So we have our, not only is it dual CPU, but it has the AGP interface for PCI expansion interface, as well as the one ISA slot, or sorry, two. I didn't see it. We have two ISA slots here. Absolutely amazing, well-rounded board. And I'll tell you, I will be disappointed if we're not able to get this posting, because if this posts, this is worthy of a full restoration, even a complete rebuild in a completely different case, because I just love the look of this, and being able to clean this all up and get this running again today, it will be very exciting. Okay, so I think based on everything I'm seeing here, we're good to go. The RAM is populated. We have the CPUs. I'm going to put those cards back in and get this system all turned around and see if we can get this fired up on the bench. Okay, and here we are all set back up, and I'm really excited to see if this computer is going to post. Now, I did plug in the power. I did not get any response from the power supply, like nothing adjusted or changed like it did on the Dell. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. We're not sure. We have the monitor turned on, keyboard and mouse plugged in. Let's hit the power button. The only thing I did do is reseat this front bezel so the power button will work. And I just pop that front back on there. Okay, hit the power button and see if we can get this computer posting. There's zero power at all, it seems, going to the power supply. Let me just unplug the power supply itself, and we'll take out the ATX connector. We have that disconnected now. Let's hook up our power supply tester and see if we get any life from that power supply. No, that power supply is completely non-functional. All right, let's see if I can get a temporary power supply connected to this system. Okay, so I'm back and I have another power supply connected here. It's one of my more modern power supplies, but it should work just fine for this system. Yeah, let's just see if we're able to get the system posting. Well, we have power this time. I heard the post beep. I have a responsive numlock key, but nothing on the screen. Now, I don't know if when I reseated the card, there was an issue here. So let me just see. Let me take the card out and reseat it right now. Okay, and we're back. And yeah, a bit of an update for everyone. So it took me quite a bit to see if we can get the system running. And I thought it was my power supply potentially causing the issue, because I was getting no post beeps outside of just the regular one, like it was supposed to be posting, which is beautiful. But for whatever reason, I wasn't getting any video signal. So then what I did was I swapped out this card. So this is the Matrox card here. And I added some contact cleaner to the contacts. I did some cleaning of it, and it didn't make any difference. For whatever reason, this card will allow the system to post, but won't display any video signal on the monitor here. And so, yeah, I'm definitely going to do some looking around here. I'll check all the different pins and things like that just to see if we can get this up and running. But that'll be for a future day. But for now, I just threw in the Rage 128 Pro AGP card that I have here. Nothing too fancy, just a card to see if it'll post. Sure enough, let's turn up the computer and see what happens. We have the post beep, and we have display. System number 3 is posting, everybody. Absolutely excited to see this on the screen. Let's go through this. So it's showing a Pentium 2 ECC 350 megahertz processor, 2 processors detected. Now, on the sticker on the back of the computer, it states Pentium 2 450. So I was a bit confused when I saw this, and I looked at the actual numbers written on the processors themselves, and it does show 350. So I'm not sure why they would have Pentium 2 450 in the back of it, but it is showing dual Pentium 2 350 CPUs here. So the board is the Asus P2B-D motherboard, so it does show that here. We have 128 megabytes of memory. It is SD RAM. We also have the Creative Sound Blaster 16 plug and play connected here as well, and it can't detect a hard drive, which we know. I'm going to go into setup for a moment and just see what we have in here. Okay, so we have our standard CMOS here. So this is just screaming for some spinning rust, I think. It thinks it's back in 1997, so we're going even further back in time. But it's nice to be able to go in here and, yeah, just to be able to go in and tweak all your different settings. I always loved this BIOS specifically. It was definitely something that I enjoyed. But it's nice to be able to go in here and tweak different settings if you want. And I'm pretty confident that there would be a BIOS update for this that will give you more features. So, you know, it'd be interesting to go in here and tweak it a little bit. I'm not sure if you can do much with the processor in terms of tweaking the speed or what have you. It is showing the internal core speed of 350 megahertz. Not sure if you can actually change some of the front side bus settings and things like that. Maybe you can do that in a future update. I say that just because having the dual, I'll be honest, this is my first time having two dual systems, dual CPU systems. We have the dual CPU, the Pentium 3 CPU that we had in the Dell, and then in this system here, we have the dual Pentium 2 350 processors here. So you have to let me know down in the comments what essentially what operating system would support the dual processors. I believe Windows 2000 did, but you'll have to let me know in the comments. So, of course, we don't have power to the optical drive because I don't have it connected due to the other power supply here. Okay, so I have our CD-ROM drive connected. It's just an A-open 48-speed CD burner that we have here, so we're all good to go. I'm just going to power up the system. Oh, keep on forgetting that switch. Turn on the system and put the disk in. And ideally, this is IDE, so ideally it will pick up in the BIOS for us, and we should be good to boot from it. There we are. And we are booting from the Knoppix CD, no problem now. Just had to remember that there's no working coin cell battery, so it lost all the settings after I told it to boot from this. Okay, so we have dual Pentium 2. There's our processor, 350 megahertz. And for we have a Rage 4, Rage 128 Pro AGP 4X. That's our video card, which I implied earlier. It's funny that it's not detecting the sound card this time. Usually it does that when it goes through this process as a Sound Blaster 16. It did in the BIOS, though, for the computer, so I'm not too worried about it. And right now it's going through and detecting the other requirements for the operating system. So let's continue booting into Knoppix. Okay, so I tried to load Knoppix on the system using the A-open CD-ROM drive. You knew I did that. You saw that on the video. And for whatever reason, it continued to give me out of range on my video or on my monitor. So I swapped out the monitor for two other monitors I have. One that's brand new, has all the range in the world, and then, of course, this other one. So for whatever reason, while Knoppix is loading, it does show all the different setup. It does show the processors, all the stuff that we already saw. However, when it tries to go into the graphical user environment, it's not able to work. For whatever reason, it will not load. It just continues to spin the CD at high rates of speed and doesn't access it and locks the system up for whatever reason. And I'm not sure if it's because Knoppix is not happy with the computer itself in terms of it being a Pentium 2. I don't remember if I've run this on something this early before, or if it was because of the RAM again. If you notice, the RAM has gone up a bit because I did swap out some of the memory to see, because in one of my other videos, it was the RAM causing the problem. So I did try that as well, and for whatever reason, I wasn't able to get Knoppix running. But I am confident that we could get an operating system running on this computer. I'm really excited to do so, and I'm really excited to see this computer in action in a full restoration. Not using this chassis, probably. I would probably end up using a different case, totally different than what we have here, and just to really showcase that dual Pentium 2 350 CPU setup and just amazing hardware. I'm going to call it system number 3. I am confident to say that it is fully functional, and I'm really excited, like I mentioned, to get this up and running in a different chassis in the future. Different video, stay tuned. All right, let's get all this mess cleaned up that we have going on here and get ready for our outro. And here we are back where we started, and what a beautiful sight to see. As I mentioned, I absolutely love seeing the beige case design. because whenever I see one of these systems, it brings back so much nostalgic memories for me, and also the feeling of mystery. You never know what you're going to get when you go into these systems. Even this OEM system was still exciting to see what was inside of it. I mean, going from our Pentium 4 system, we weren't able to get this computer up and running, obviously due to the CPU or what have you not coming out of reset. We definitely need to do some more troubleshooting around there. My gut feeling is that the capacitors around the CPU do need to be replaced to be able to get that up and running and going again. But again, a beautiful looking case, nice hardware inside this, and it is an ASUS system. So again, really good. We're going to do that in a future video and get that computer up and running, give it the love it deserves. Then this beast, I mean, it needs no mention. It is a Dell Precision 420. It is built like a tank. And my first time seeing or owning in the collection, I should say, dual Pentium 3 CPUs on board. And, you know, having a board that supports, it literally sports the entire back panel and has the dual power supply capability. So I could put a secondary ATX power supply in here, plus the RAM, the RD RAM, and then again, just having all the expansion capabilities within the system is just absolutely amazing and could make a really cool retro build, having all the different abilities to be able to upgrade this. So really excited to have this. Needs some work to the fan, of course. There's definitely some issues with the noise with that, but hey, you know, we can certainly do that in a future video and get this computer up and running as well. And the ugliest computer of the lot has the most surprises. And I'm just so happy to have dug into this. Again, when we got the lot, like I said, I saw this and I just went, oh, that's just going to be absolute junk. It's going to be a Pentium 2 computer and that's it. But it's dual Pentium 2 350 with that Matrox video card. You know what? It didn't work, but that's okay. We have the Rage 128 Pro in there now. We can certainly take a look at this card because I believe this is hopefully salvageable. We'll do some testing and see if we can get that working again. But again, we do have this computer in front of us, and having the Asus board that's in there, full-fledged board with the dual CPUs, the AGP slot, the 4 PCI slots, and the 2 ISA slots gives us a whole bunch of expansion capability. Plus, hey, we get a bonus ISA Sound Blaster 16 card in this computer with it, with that header on there for the IDE connection, which is really awesome to have. Just a beautiful sight on the bench. I'm always excited to go through and see these mystery computers, find out what's inside them, tell them, you know, see if they post. 2 of the 3 posted, of course. You know, we don't have a perfect record today, but I'm very excited with the hardware we were able to see on the bench today. That said, if you liked today's video, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button, help the channel grow. Hit the notification button, change it to all. You'll be notified of new content such as this. Please leave a comment down below. What sort of systems have you had in the past? Did you own any of this hardware before? On the dual CPU systems, what kind of operating system should be running on the systems to be able to take advantage of those dual CPU capabilities? I'm really excited to hear from you in the comments. I respond to absolutely every one of them. I love the interaction on the channel. Always making new content. We'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.